Today, you guys got both Don and I, and we have a special guest, so you're out for a treat.
We've got an all-star lineup here today. I'm excited about it.
We're going to talk about peptides, and I do want to introduce Dr. Melissa Petersen, who is a clinician, longevity strategist. She's been in the longevity and health span space for a really long time. I love that you actually trademark health span and well span frameworks. So, and you're really just helping these individuals and organizations think beyond optimizing toward true human flourishing. And the
Yeah.
reason why we want to talk about peptides today with you is because you have looked at these compounds for a really long time, and there's a lot of confusion about them. People are not sure what's considered a peptide to begin with. They don't know that a lot of things that they may already be taking, especially in the world of GLP-1s, are peptides. Our bodies are making peptides. So there's just so much going on. And of course, there's confusion. What's proven, what's emerging science, what's just buzz, and what we shouldn't be paying attention to. So, Melissa, welcome. We are thrilled to have you.
Well, thank you guys for having me. It's going to be an exciting, wonderful, rich conversation. And yes, I started working with peptides in clinical practice over a decade ago. And peptides have been around for a very long time. We'll dive into that. So use them in clinical practice for a long time. And I have been educating, doing postgraduate education for clinicians for well over 20 years. And about 10 years ago, one of my academies then, we were doing a lot with epigenetics. And I launched my first longevity program. And then I opened Human Longevity Institute and now Peptide University. So mypeptideuniversity.com is where we are the global authority in peptide education, specifically for health and wellness clinicians, doctors, coaches, leaders in this integrative space, because exactly why we're having this conversation today, it has just exploded with people going, what the heck is a peptide? And clinicians going, I've got patients and clients coming to me asking me about peptides and I don't know anything. So it's a full standardized CME, clinical education platform, certification pathway. So yes, so all things peptides, we can talk about them, and wherever you guys want to dive in, I say, let's do it.
I love that. Okay. So people are hearing the word peptide left and right, but is it something that you think the majority of our population should be aware of, much like they're aware of supplements and vitamin C?
Sure. Yeah, peptides are not going away. So you're only going to hear more and more and more about them. And it's a rapidly evolving landscape as far as how to access them, who wants to have control over them. They are a very hot profit center, but why is the real question. And that's because these are small, intelligent molecules that are naturally occurring in the body. In fact, we have more than 300,000 peptides within the human system that we know of at this time. And so all a peptide are amino acids. So they are small bonds of amino acids, approximately 2 to 50 amino acids in length bonded together. And the way that I want people to think about that, what's an amino acid? Well, amino acids are the tiny building blocks that come together that when you have enough of them, they create a bigger strand of information that forms a protein. Proteins are building blocks for every single thing in the human system. And all this stuff all amino acids are code. Let's just break it down real simply. They're just instructions. And so based on how these amino acids form, and it's not just a peptide that is amino acids. Again, we go from these peptides, these polypeptides, these protein structures, and all of it is information code in the body that travels to produce certain functions, outcomes, and signals. And so they are small, cell-signaling, intelligent molecules that we make internally, but now there's this massive market for an external exogenous input into the system. And why would we do that? Well, because we need more of it. And it's a little bit more nuanced than that, but I'll kind of take a pause in case there's a question there before I just keep rolling.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. And we've talked about anytime you have a system, you have a ligand, you have a molecule that is a peptide normally that lands on a receptor. It's a lock and key situation, lands on the receptor. That receptor is also a protein. They connect and it triggers something in the cell, extracellular, somewhere in the body. But again, you just said that At this point, we know of 300,000. This is what we refer to as what's called proteomics,
Hmm.
studying the proteins in our body, and this peptide has emerged. Now, this largely has been communist bloc, Russian-based theory. Is that true? Am I missing something there? Because they seem to be way ahead of this than traditional Western medicine.
So you're thinking bioregulators, and yes, Russia did a lot of early access into their marketplace with peptides. So bioregulators are a even smaller component of a peptide. So whereas peptides are on average, again, 2 to 50, but we're looking typically like around 15, bonds in length is kind of what a lot of these things are on average. Some of them are 30, some are up to 40. But a bioregulator is 2 to 4 amino acids. And instead of sitting on the receptor, it actually goes into the cell. And so it is
Okay.
an epigenetic switch or modulator. And so it is working differently and it's very targeted into tissues. And a peptide is more pleiotropic. So peptides are going to work more on pathways and a little bit more globally and across multiple functional streams within the body, where again, a bioregulator is going to be very tissue specific. It's going to go into that cell and it's going to affect more of a regenerative, reparative effect. And so that's really where a lot of the research started in Russia, was with
Hmm.
the bioregulators, and pretty phenomenal research, actually. What I will say is that one of the most widely used and longest standing peptides that has been around for close to 100 years is insulin.
Hmm.
So that's something we all know. And again, peptides can be hormones, but not all hormones are peptides. So there's chew on that one for a second. But in Russia, there was definitely a lot more experimentation, a lot more utilization of these molecules because they wanted to help their soldiers heal. They were in those submarines, they were aging at a very rapid pace, and the government came back and said, "Hey, basically, what can we do about this?" Is the short version of the story. And the solutions that they found were really, really quite remarkable. So yeah.
Now, in our country, so much of our medical industry is based on your ability to generate revenue from a discovery. And this is where our pharmaceutical industry really lies. I mean, if
Yeah.
they can't get a patent on something, they're not really interested in it. And the fact that we're dealing with these natural
Hmm.
proteins, I was getting ready to use the term extract. I'm not sure that's the appropriate term, but these natural molecules, you can't patent this. You may be able to patent the production, you might be able to patent something in the process. It's not like, now GLP-1s are unique. They're a peptide, and it seems to me like there's been some patentability issues there. But is this the reason these have not emerged more so in our medical practice?
So, yes, and I'll go a little deep in this for you. So, historically, it really, I will back up to say that especially the category of GLPs have been around for 20 years, and we'll
Mhm.
unpack that a little bit in this conversation. But really, even back in like the mid 2000, like 2013, 2015, peptides were becoming more popular. They were starting to be more adopted. And for a long time, it's not that pharma didn't realize they existed. They just were like, yeah, and they, because of naturally occurring molecules, it's like, not really. We can't really patent as much. Like, okay, whatever. That's not something we're paying attention to.
Mhm.
And then it's, a very interesting thing. And GLPs are not the first peptide category that has done great things. Again, we can just defer to insulin.
Mhm.
However, something really unique occurred during this process, that the first iteration was over 20 years ago. And as they began to work with these molecules and really look at how these are targeting key pathways in the body, and they, thinking at first, like, and this is what happens with a lot of drug discovery, that there's this idea. So it's still scientific discovery, right? Like, okay, I have a hypothesis. And so now let's go put a thesis. Let's see if this actually flushes out the way we think, like the way it should work. And the iterations of these GLPs really first were looking, again, strictly at diabetes, and then very targeted to type 2 diabetes. And then, oh, by the way, wow, we're seeing there's a lot of weight loss with this. This is interesting. And so and then they start to really understand the ways and the pathways and dive a little deeper into what's really happening here in the body with these and in the dosing. And dosing's a part of it. And so now all of a sudden, as they start to realize, wait, we're onto something here, right? And we look at what's one of the biggest problems in the United States, especially, but also globally, 3 out of every 4 people have some type of metabolic dysfunction insufficiency. If we can bring a solution to market that's helping metabolics, right? Helping overweight, obesity, blood sugar, insulin dysregulation, we can have a blockbuster drug. And in fact, they do, and they did, right? And so knowing that, yes, while they cannot patent the natural structure of here's the code that naturally occurs in the body. The GLP, it's naturally produced in the gastric system, like it's made in the body. So, okay. So now what can we patent? Well, they patented the delivery system. They patented the bioavailability. And so this is where things get really unique. So we're seeing a lot of innovation in the peptide space on delivery methodology, time release, because in the lane of pharmacokinetics, it's going, okay, here's this molecule. And so is it bioavailable? Is it stable? Can we get it into the body? How long is it available to the body? Will it get through the stomach? Like there's all these different things that have to be looked at. And peptides as a category, they're very delicate little, structures. They don't have a long shelf life. And so the moment that you reconstitute these, they typically, and you bring them into the body, they typically are signaling for minutes to hours, not days to weeks. And so what was very interesting as semaglutide, Ozempic first kind of to the market in the big way, was a big part of what they did was how they actually, the fermentation process of how they actually got the proteins, then the delivery, the fact that could be stable in the body, like it's got a shelf life. The pharmacokinetic, the half-life it's 168 hours. So basically, again, kind of hitting that 7-day mark. We're now in categories of drugs that they're looking at a whole, like a 30-day, like it's stable in the system for up to 30 days. I have opinions on that, which we don't need to get into right in this moment. But to your point, Dawn, yes, they have found really unique ways. So everything from patenting the name, the way it's used, the way it's delivered, the way it's formulated, packaging, marketing, even their research,
the claims,
even the study. Like if you are not using Ozempic, and you've got data on your website as a clinician citing stats from that drug, but you're using a research grade of it, something different, or from a compounding pharmacy, they can come after you legally. So what they've done, like they have kind of, and I'll go to bat, I'll say it, I will lovingly say it, Big Pharma is like the mafia. And it's phenomenal the way that they have, it's quite impressive. They've got the money, they can do it. It's unfortunate because it really does box out the consumer having access to these molecules because they are so transformative. They are so beneficial. They are so helpful. And there's so much good to them. So once they cracked the code, the stuff that's coming and the stuff that they're doing, they're not playing. They know, oh, now we know how to monopolize this whole thing and how to set precedents and how to set laws. So Peptide University, we are the approved education body for the American Peptide Association. I'm on the board over there, and we do a lot around legislation, lobbying, and really having a coalition come together to really create legal protection and oversight to the consumer. At the end of the day, it's really our ability to have access to these molecules, and pharma is definitely doing a monopoly, and they're putting some heavy fear in the hearts and minds of people everywhere with access to these things.
I wonder, in terms of what you've seen with peptides, is it a little bit of a Wild West when it comes to not just GLP-1s, but all the other ones that are out there, where there is experimental ones, there are people selling off-label use. So especially with Peptide University, you got to be seeing so much of different use cases.
Yeah. So, and here's, there's always, it's interesting. Obviously, I've been in the integrative healthcare space forever. And, we get to this point where we feel like the FDA and the government's a little bit of big brother, and then pharma, and there's all the powers that be, and there's control. And there is, yes. And I'm not saying that that's not accurate, but if we really step back for a moment and say, the one thing that the FDA is actually trying to do is to ensure that there's safety in the marketplace. And
which is a good thing. That's important.
It is a good thing. Yes. I'm not going to bash it at all.
Yeah.
And It's a very good thing. And so I think we are at a time where I just really want to invite everybody, consumer and clinician alike, to use critical thinking. It's not just throw the baby out with the bathwater, as that terrible analogy goes. It's not an either or binary. It's like going, wait a minute, how do we sift through and maybe find a new way of understanding and approaching the marketplace, our access to things? Not everybody is good and bad. And it's not just that. There are all these shades of gray. And we joke because peptides are actually termed a gray space. And so you have to, you get really good at kind of looking through different lenses, understanding, access points and what makes something really good versus dangerous. And why is this space called the Wild West? Because there isn't oversight. Historically, until recently, there has not been as much oversight. There has not been as much regulation because pharma wasn't really in the game for a while. And it was back in 2023 that the FDA did step in and said, wait a minute, there's a lot happening out here that we don't have eyes on and we're not regulating, and we're seeing too much inconsistency. There's a lot of risk here. And what's the real risk? Well, the real risk is sourcing, quality, and again, oversight. And I make the metaphor, the analogy, just like supplements. And Dawn, you'll really appreciate this. So clinicians typically will sell to their clients and patients nutraceuticals. Well, what is the difference between a nutraceutical and just a regular vitamin supplement that you get at a GNC or a Walmart or anything like that? It's that they all go through GMP, right? There's third-party testing validations, there's GMP practices, there's actual oversight to ensure that what's on the label is in the bottle. The concentrations that it says have been tested, have been validated, and they have to be shelf stable and as potent at the expiration point 2 years from the time on that as they were when they first got in the bottle, right? Yeah. And so there's regulation, there's oversight. And so, yeah, you pay a little bit more for a nutraceutical, a clinical grade, because you know that it's got potency. You know where it came from. You know it's clean. You know it's good. You know it's going to work. So, well, we haven't had that in peptide therapy. The only way you could historically, like the easy point of access was through compounding pharmacies. Now, compounding pharmacies is kind of the government's way of saying, hey, this is third-party testing. This is GMP processes. What's on there is in there. There's got to be checks and balances, right? And once a year, they spot check the compounding pharmacies to make sure that everything is being done up and properly. And so they're supposed to anyway. And so that's how they were available until they got recategorized because the FDA is like, there's too much happening out here. So the part that was rising really quickly was research. And research is really the direct-to-consumer lane, which isn't a bad thing. However, when you don't know what you're getting, you don't know where you're getting it from, you don't really know what's in the bottle, right? Did they make it in their bathtub? Where did it come from? There has unfortunately been a lot of that in the industry. Now, there's a couple of really good players out there, but most of them are not. Most of them, and there's so much fraud because there's massive money to be made in the space. Like the markup, the revenue of what's available is huge. And again, so when there's not regulation, people can drive prices up. They can have crap in the bottle. I can't tell you how many times I heard that when people went and got it tested, there wasn't even a peptide in the bottle. Oh, it was like baking soda, dry. You know what I mean? Wow. So hence why we're now kind of at this time to say, who are the real players? Where's this stuff really coming from? What is really legit? And part of what's happening right now is there is a big shakedown from the FDA. Letters are going out to research groups. There are lawsuits coming out. People are being threatened. Like there are raids that are happening. And this isn't because it's not that the peptides are bad. It's that the industry got really dirty really fast. And so it's time to clean it up. And what will be left over will be phenomenal. And so we're just trying to create a little level playing field to keep the end user as protected to be able to start to access these in a better way.
So let's talk about that for just a second, because I live in really three different worlds. Number one, I live in athletics. Number two, I live in longevity. And number three, fitness, which is a different branch of longevity. And their bro science in all three of these areas is off the chain, and it's buyer beware at the highest level. I hear things, see things, and I just think to myself, you're so effing wrong. But so when you have someone out there without an advanced degree in either medicine or science or something like that, who is the peptide guy, that makes me nervous. And in fact, I have a very good friend who's a physician I was asking this about, and he referred me to one of these bro science guys. And this young man is very intelligent. He does a very good job, but I'm just concerned. Now, so we've laid out the fact that we really have three pathways. We have a traditional research pathway where we have products that are approved by the FDA. With second pathway is compounding pharmacy products. And I'm assuming the compounding pharmacy are getting their peptides from the first lane. They're going to approved research, not research grade, but approved human approved peptides. Then we have this third lane of research grade peptides.
Yeah. And
I get at least 3 emails a week from one of these companies saying, hey, check this out. And literally the list of peptides is hundreds. It's just not manageable. So you have this emergence of the bro science guy in one of these areas, longevity, fitness, or sport. And seems to me like there's risk of, number one, of testing positive if you're an Olympic athlete, if you have if you have a water required testing, number one. Number two is, I don't think the risk of necessarily poisoning yourself is quite as high as it's portrayed, but it could be there. How do you manage that landscape?
Yeah. Okay. So a lot to unpack and all really good stuff. First of all, to any athlete out there are a handful of peptides that are absolutely on the WADA list. You don't want to be doing BPC. You don't want to be doing TP500. You don't want to be doing CJC, ipamorelin. Like, you don't want to be doing those things at all, not while you're actively being drug tested. The only time to look at doing those is when you're completely off season and you are recovering from an injury and you're not going to be tested for a while, like to help with recovery. But I do not actively endorse. You need to be very, very aware of that. And then the bigger question that you're really asking, Dawn, is again about where are we sourcing from, understanding kind of our supply chain and what's really quality, what's really good, and how do we go about doing it? And so let me pull back and say that, again, in this gray space, what's kind of emerged is, so think about research use as direct to consumer. That's the stuff that you're not getting a prescription, you're not working with a clinician. That's where the bro sciences and the Reddit threads blew up for the longest time, right? Like finding it, and where does it typically come from? Typically comes from China, and not saying that China's making a bad product, but not all labs are the same. Right. And there's a lot of fraud, and there's a lot of, and it's even, I've seen pictures of how some of these labs are run. Let's just say they're not sterile. So things can be ingredients can be sitting in a bag on a floor with God knows what else is blowing around in the room. There becomes this whole, what else is in it? And we refer to those as excipients. What else has gotten into that bottle? Now, they're supposed to be doing certificates of analysis, testing it. What is the purity of this? Is it clean? What else is in there? There's been, unfortunately, again, through the research lane, and I'm going to clean this up and clarify it here in a moment. Historically, hence how we got here, there was a lot of falsification of COAs. The one first sample is taken and a COA is made, but that is just for one little bit of it and not for everything else that follows from it. So it sources to that one little clean sample, but it doesn't mean that the rest of it that's maybe 80% pure, God knows what else is in there, right? So again, that's kind of how we got to the messy place. And so that is a big part of what letters are going out. There's crackdown. You're going to see less and less of those emails come. And those places there's going to be legal action taken sooner and sooner. And so the people that are going to stay in it, there's going to be more gatekeeping on the front end. All these sites, you have to enter information, you have to verify you're of age. In most of these sites now, you're going to have to actually upload identification. And this is all kind of coming by way of government oversight, saying if you don't verify that these are real humans, right? But then that's also the rub. Research use only is supposed to say not for human use. And it's just for research. And so if you're a clinician selling research knowingly, then you're being complicit in doing something that's not for human use. But it was really a code that was given. Again, it's the direct to consumer. There's an opportunity for cleaning up that language as the industry gets cleaned up. And so it's still out there. And I want to tell people, you don't have to be afraid of research. Like, you don't. There are some really good companies. There's only a few, but they're doing it well and they're doing it right. But the majority of them, if and you see somebody that's got a catalog of 100 different things, it's like, buyer beware. It really is. And that's why you're going to hear and see more and more and more. And this goes to the point that you made. It's like, you're seeing the bro science and you're seeing things that are put out that you're like, oh my gosh, like, that's not really what you should be doing. Hence why mypeptideuniversity.com is here. We are such an advocate of, if you're going to be working with these molecules, I don't care if you're a prescriber or a non-prescriber, if you're a coach and you're the fitness industry or you're a neurosurgeon, if you are working with these molecules, you have to understand they're not like a supplement. They're not like a drug. They are different. And they are sending out signals. And what happens in the body? How do we prepare to actually get a good response? Because of the industry and how this has been historically, most of the data sets, most of the studies have been done on animals. We don't have a lot of human studies. And that goes back to what you asked earlier, Claudia. That's not a bad thing. We actually have a lot of biohackers. And again, bro science, there's been N of 1 personal data collection for a very long time. So when we look at kind of these standard doses, it's just kind of like the problem with GLPs. The dosing's way too high. And we don't need it that high at all. Like, what we're really finding and understanding, and we're doing a lot of research inside of my Peptide University, is that, first of all, people are stacking too many things. So they're doing too much, too high doses, and intermixing with other things that are happening in the system and the physiology. And while these have a very high safety profile, because people go, well, they're naturally occurring, they're super safe. Well, they are, but when you don't know where you're getting the product from and you got excipients in it, I can't tell you how many allergic, and I don't just mean hives or redness at the injection site. I mean, like, anaphylaxis in some people. Like, I mean, we've had people, I get called up that rush to the emergency room. Oh my gosh, I was having tachycardia. Well, of course, look at the dosing that you're doing. Do you understand how this thing works? And so it's why we are just so adamant that if you're working with the molecules and you are the consumer that's going to work with somebody, please don't just follow a TikTok influencer. If they've been trained, if they've been certified, great. Come and get certified at mypeptideuniversity.com. Like, that is step 1. It's a non-negotiable. And there's other places that certify also. There's a couple out there. There's not many, but you need to get educated. And we really do it in a way that we are teaching the clinician, not just the scientific studies and not just theory. We're actually grounding it. Like, all of our adjunct faculty has been utilizing peptide therapy for a decade or more in clinical practice. So it's real world vetted. We're looking at real-time dosing, real-time protocols, real-time case studies, real-time patient care, so that we can move the needle forward in a safe and effective way for clinicians and for the consumers. Because if I had to tell people anything, I would say less is more. Less is more. You don't need to do a ton in the system. You don't need to go this super physiological, and don't overstack. A lot of times what happens, and be very wary of blends, and there's, again, only one company right now that I know of, and I'm on the board of, they do stability testing on their blends. It's the only one I know of that it's as stable pre as it is post when it's lyophilized, completely stable. Because what happens with peptides, depending on which ones, is now all of a sudden you might have 2 different molecules that you've put together in one bottle, but now you've created a new line of code. And it doesn't mean that the code is reading the same way they were intended individually. And then there's some that, if it's like everybody's loving the glow stack, but when you put GHK copper, in with these other molecules, like, it's oxidizing. It is creating a new expression. And, we had somebody reach out even that was doing the glow stack, and they couldn't understand, and they started to have blue around their lips, and come to find out the person had filler in their lips. Like, there's different, and GHK copper is blue. So it's like it was attracting into the area. And so there's all these little things that, did it go away? Yes. Did it take time? Yeah, because that filler is grabbing it and kind of holding it, right?
Yeah.
But there are other things, is why I'm saying it's so important. These molecules are freaking amazing. Like they're so incredible, and I don't want people to be afraid of them, but I do want people to understand that we are in the Wild West, and typically people are doing too much, too fast. The system's going to crash, and it's not that the peptides are bad. It's where did they source from? Did you have support and oversight? Are you working with a trained clinician? Because you can really get phenomenal healing, recovery, and optimization outcomes. You just have to know how, when, and why to use
Wow.
them.
Okay. This has been one of the most clearest ways I have heard peptides explained in a really long time, if not ever. Like peptides have been an area of interest of mine. I've never tried them, but I have people around me who have, and also other people who are curious. And for some reason, well, not for some reason, I just haven't dug deep enough to really understand exactly how they work, people are sourcing them from, etc. All the things that you just explained. So thank you. Goodness. I have a quick question about bioavailability in a different
Yeah.
delivery mechanism, because I'm seeing peptides, obviously when
Mhm.
somebody thinks of peptides, injection, but there are now like these strips that dissolve in the mouth of your mouth, on
Yeah.
the top of your mouth, on your roof of your
Yeah.
mouth, and then there are obviously supplements that you take. So,
Mhm.
and you mentioned that the bioavailability of these compounds is not necessarily a long shelf life unless it's like really packaged in a really strong
Yes.
system, but can we trust something that's, let's say, in a skincare cream and it's
Um,
sitting on my shelf for like months?
Yeah, so good. Okay, so there's a couple parts to that. First, let me say that just to be clear, subcutaneous is going to be your most potent delivery form. Okay, so that is the best. That's the most stable, your most bioavailable. And not everybody likes to do an injection. And so when we look at other delivery forms, there are things like oral. So there's a small catalog of molecules that actually can be done in a capsule form.
Hmm.
But now we're also doing a lot of nasals. So nasals and like a lozenge. So we're seeing patches. And do we know if it is as effective? Well, what we typically know is that each of these delivery forms are less bioavailable. So you are still going to get it. You're just not going to get the same amount of concentration. And so for me, when I look and I've got clinicians coming and consumers too going, what's my dosing? Like, how do I dose it? That's where things get a little interesting, right? Like kind of going, okay, we understand this is 100%. Now we're coming down to 50%. Now we're coming down to 40%. And some of us are like, yeah, but I don't want to take a shot. So I'd so much rather do more nasal sprays. Like I'd rather do 3 squirts a day
Yeah.
than 1 shot a day, right?
But
So
the truth is, you may be at clinical effectiveness at 40%.
completely, Dawn,
Yeah,
100%. And like I said earlier, I am the biggest proponent of what is the smallest
Yeah.
dose. We want to go for the lowest
minimum
effective
effective
dose
dose. Yep.
that
Mhm.
will create the greatest shift. Because again, we are so conditioned as a consumer driven society that a little must be good, so a lot must be better.
Oh God,
And we think
yes,
that's what it
essentially.
takes, but you actually can create a lot of disruption in the system, and it's not about like we're not trying to storm the castle. Like again, these are intelligent signals. And so what's the bare minimum? It's activating with pathways that are already doing things in the body, right? So we're just kind of going boop, 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 boop. We're just making the signal a little louder, boop, 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 and trying to turn up the volume really loud doesn't mean it's going to work faster. It actually can become more disruptive and actually become even less effective and or have other downstream effects. So lowest dose, less is always more with these molecules. And then Claudia, to answer the last part of your question, especially about skincare products. So, the reality is from a skincare standpoint, there is typically a preserving agent. Even just like with GLPs, it's how have we preserved it in a way that it is going to stay stable, right, for this period of time. And so, yes, but I will still say it really depends. There's only a couple of companies out there right now that I would even say they've got a good quality peptide-based product to trust, in the marketplace that we for sure know would be
It's
stable.
still mainly a marketing tool, not
Yeah.
Yeah.
necessarily an effective tool that we can measure a difference with.
It
And,
pulls the
and with
customer in.
skincare, it's going to, I mean, we are entering a really interesting time. I'm actually so excited of what the next year, you're going to see more and more. What you're going to see in skincare isn't actually going to be peptides. Like that's almost going to be like yesterday's news. You are going to hear more and more about exosomes and cell signaling factors and mu cell base. So that's the regenerative. And when we really think about the skin, GHK is a foundational peptide that we know, and it does work topically also. So we do have a lot of data that you can take GHK in a topical, serum, or like you can eat. We have recipes at Peptide University how you can make your own topical with aloe or hyaluronic acid and GHK copper, but it does work, right? So you can do topical. Typically, you would want to, when it comes to any of these skincares, like you're usually doing them in conjunction with some type of a treatment, right? And or if you're doing an at-home treatment, just to put it on top of that barrier doesn't mean it's going to have the deepest penetration, depending on its delivery, because all these things are Dalton sizes and how does it really get through the skin. So oftentimes we need a little stimulation, to that skin. We need to create a little trauma. So that's anytime you do a laser, anytime you even do like a little microneedling or those little roly pins that kind of already pin the skin, or even a facial scrub. Like all of that is a type of trauma that signals to the system healing. Like we need to repair cellular turnover. And so as you bring those peptides in, they're also helping with that signal, but they're really working, GHK especially, with that extracellular matrix to create more scaffolding to minimize those fine lines and wrinkles and help with wound repair. So it's pretty amazing stuff.
Very cool.
So sounds to me, based on your last statement, it sounds to me that if someone really wants to pay attention to this, and we look at regenerative medicine,
Mm-hmm.
PRP, stem cells, any of the other things that we start to see, that packaged with a peptide alongside sounds like
Yeah.
a really good strategy.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. And what we teach our clinicians, Dawn, is really how do we, because again, we've got integrate, like I said, from prescribers to non-prescribers, and that's a whole arc of who fits in that space, right? I will take a caveat that right now, especially, and we'll see some different things unfolding over the next 6 months, but the big trend right now, you're not going to be able to get GLPs. There's a lot of molecules that the only way you're going to be able to get them is if you're working with a prescriber. So what we are doing in our platform is we do now have some telehealth platforms that we are working with, and we're getting our non-prescribers certified in a way that they can refer over to those platforms. So if you still want certain molecules, so we're going to see kind of tighter access for a bit, right? As they clean up. And I didn't finish my train of thought. We have research space, we have compounding pharmacy, we have pharmaceutical use, or like, so pharmaceutical grade is the companies, and there's only a couple of them out there right now that are really B2B. They're direct to the clinician, and the clinician administers to the patient, and they go through the same level of testing that a compounding pharmacist does. So they're still following all of the FDA regulated pathways of third-party testing, stability, like everything has to be tested, everything has to be accounted for. You read the lots, you read the batches. And so that's really the space that you're going to hear more and more about. And then there is the supplement side. So there are some, like we've been talking about, different delivery methods that kind of fall in that supplement category, that you're taking it in a capsule or like a liposomal. And so that's kind of all the different access points. And although you're going to see more and more going into just kind of trying to drive you to a telehealth platform or prescription, it's not going to go away. We're going to see more and more, and back to how we train people. So knowing there's so much kind of, how does it all work? Lifestyle, molecules, technologies, and how do we build stacks? How do we build programs? How do we build protocols? How do we build plan of cares that actually create outcomes? Not just a treatment, but actually produce real corrective and health optimizing outcomes. So that's really what we teach in a model. And to your point, yes, when you start to stack, but it's not just throw the kitchen sink at it. There's still an intelligence to the body.
That's the challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have a whole proprietary pathway method that I've created. So we're teaching pathways, not just a protocol, and not just what's my dosing. It's not just about a protocol and dosing. It's you've got to understand the pathways. And so we do A before B to equal C.
You know,
You
what's interesting, oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'll give it to you in just a second, Claudia.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
What's interesting about this is that just because someone has DR, MD, DO before or after their name doesn't necessarily mean they have a handle on this, number one.
Correct.
And what I was surprised, you and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago about this and about, do you believe someone who is not a licensed care provider, nurse, practitioner, across the board, someone who has sat and taken a board certification, who has a license at risk
Yeah.
with their practice, you believe that it's appropriate, and I'm asking this because I want to clarify the position, that there's someone who may not have that, like me, I don't have a license at risk.
Right.
Okay. One of the when I'm talking to an athlete or I'm talking to someone about longevity and there's a gut issue, one of my favorite tools is an oral BPC 157. I think it's a wonderful treatment. I can do that because you can go order this stuff right off the web. You can get it from good sources, but I don't have a license at risk.
Right.
What do you think? Now, you have a certification. You know, we're both familiar with Bill Seed's work at SSRP. I think they do a really good job. I think when I go to SSRP, I see some of the smartest docs I ever met in my life. But what do I want to look for in my healthcare professional to say they've got their shit together?
Okay. So I will first back up, and that's a great question, that our certification, it has been reviewed by malpractice groups. So we're CME and malpractice reviewed, so that, and so really and truly, like more and more clinicians. So yes, if somebody's got a license, they're like, is it actually safe for me?
Right.
Well, it is, but you have to understand, based on your licensure, based on your state, and every state is also different, how you legally want to approach using these molecules. You do not have to be afraid. You just have to know the right path for
stay in your lane.
Yes. And so again, as a consumer, you want to make sure that they've been trained and not by a TikTok influencer or even a TikTok doctor who hasn't been trained. Like, any of us could go to AI. It doesn't mean it's the right information at all. And somebody can spew out something, and there's a few of them out there that they sound really good, but people who are actually like experts, and when I mean experts, they are physicians or clinicians that have been working in that area for 20, 30 years, have thousands of patients and cases and real world experience under their belt and all the studies and all the different things. And they're just like, close, but absolutely not here. This is actually very dangerous what they're saying, because they don't. So somebody can sound really in this, and it is tough. Like, it's kind of tough to go, wow, what do I do? So are they certified? First and foremost. And one of the things that we do is, it's not just about getting the certification, because we all think, especially as clinicians, like, I just have to go get certified.
Right.
That does not help you to actually know how to use this real time. Now, I teach it through a real world clinical landscape. We give a full clinical decision-making matrix. We take them through practice processes, intake forms, legal liabilities, consents, the whole deal, along with the science and the data and blah, 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 and the dosing. But it's so going off, and now I'm like losing my train of thought. But with this, it's what happens once you do the certification. Well, then you start to see people, and everybody is bio-individual. And yeah, there's patterns and there's trends, but these molecules do not work the same way in every single person.
Right.
It's not just, here's your vitamin, you take it once a day. It's understanding dosing and timing and terrain and pathways. And so part of our certification comes with a membership. Like, we stand behind it because we have classes every single week. And this week we actually have one on regenerative aesthetics, Claudia, interestingly enough. We have one of the top experts out there. We're going to be talking all about peptides and skin and regenerative molecules. So I think it's really important that a consumer looks to make sure, first of all, that these because we weren't trained this stuff in our traditional trainings. None of us were. So this is all post-grad continuing education. Have they been certified? Where from? We are building a directory. So over at mypeptideuniversity.com, soon we will have a directory. So if they're looking for certified, clinicians, they'll be able to find it right there from our site, which is really great. So it's that, but it's also, for the actual clinician, It is making sure that you got to get certified. We have 2 really trusted malpractice groups that they're not afraid of peptides. They know how safe and effective they are. They do cover peptide therapy with these clinicians. And if you've got a license, you're actually in the best position. Now, you made a comment, Dawn, about going, I don't have a license to lose. So is it easier for me to go out and potentially recommend? Yes and no. So again, we have to understand our scope, our background. So I'll just say you in the fitness realm. Let's just kind of come from there, right? Because you've probably got some
The-
fitness instructors.
Listen, you walk into the Arnold, or you walk into the
Yeah.
Olympia, and here are, first of all, you've got all these knotheads there trying to get all the protein supplements they can get, but then they walk across the peptide booth and, oh, let me get this alligator stack and this stack and that stack. And I'm looking at that going, well, there is a lot of downside.
Yeah.
And I want to touch one thing real quick. I'm going to let you go, but certification, as someone who's been working in certification for over 40 years, certification is really just, they won't kill you. Okay. It does not mean excellence.
Correct.
Okay. And everybody puts all this certified stuff after their name. And I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay. Because just because you're certified, what it means is I know you're probably not going to kill me, but you may not be able to help me.
Correct. Which is why our doctors come in to grand rounds every week. It's like they sit down with our chief medical officer. We say, bring your patient cases. Do not go practice on your patients. That's not where you practice this stuff. Come in and be intelligent and understand. Like, we are consulting some of the top direct-to-consumer brands. Last night I was on a call with a group of 20 different doctors. And so they don't know this stuff. And we're helping to walk them through protocols and cases and what to understand and what to look for. So I think what's exciting is the industry is leaning in. People are hungry. Clinicians are hungry. They want to know. They don't have to be afraid. We don't gatekeep anything at my Peptide University. Like, we want you to know vendors. We want you to know the best of the best. We want you to know, to be safe, to be covered. When you are not a licensed physician or prescriber, if you're a non-prescriber, there are still access points. So it's either A, being able to team up with approved licensed telehealth platforms. So you do your magic, right? You still do your stuff. You do your programs, your protocols, and you have legal access to FDA-approved, compliant, safe, quality, validated peptides and hormones and the stuff, right? So we've got that, but there are also, so Dawn, the one thing that you can do, and even a licensed prescriber can do, if it's in the supplement category, I can recommend that. Now, if I'm a prescriber or a
Should it be,
non-prescriber,
though? That's the question.
yeah, again, there's still shades of gray out there, right? So there's only a couple of companies that I even endorse for their brands. However, you still, if you are working with another human, and you are making that recommendation, even if it falls in the lane of supplementation, you still want an informed consent. Because at the end of the day, it's just another level of protection, because the consumer really does have to say, and these are so safe. Like, I don't want people to leave here feeling afraid. Like, I want you to feel really empowered to know we're cleaning up our act. Like, it's not that, there's money, and pharma wants they're going to control it as much as they can. But overall, it's about saying, let's help people. And what's exciting, and here's where I will give pharma a little gratitude, is what we don't realize is the amount of money that they spend in research of what it really takes to look at these and to ensure safety effectively. We've got the bro science dudes that are willing to do the N of 1, and they're putting their own health at risk and having early heart attacks, at the Arnold and things like that, because they're overdoing it. So there's kind of this spectrum from too little, too much. Some works, some doesn't. But that's life, right? That's how we learn. We get up every day. Some days we fall down. It didn't work. We get back up. We try it a new way. And so I think that together, we don't have to be afraid of these things. We get to be informed. We get to be intelligent. We get to align with communities and educational centers that feel right to us. We are very community-based. We have such a diverse, amazing group of clinicians that come in, and they're peer-to-peer. So I don't care where you go, just go somewhere. Keep learning, keep being supported, and keep sharing the data. Because the more that we can look at the information, and the more that we can start to have evidence-based realizations that dosing ranges can lower, as an example, We teach so much on microdosing. Like that's one of our tenets through all of our protocols. So I see us as a disruptor. I actually see us as I want to work. I want my Peptide University to even be an allied resource to pharma because there's tons of clinicians out there that are prescribing in the wrong way and they don't know there's more. And it's only going to help everybody if we know off-label and on-label uses. We know how to think intelligently, safely, effectively with these naturally occurring molecules that are just there to help us, heal, function, express greater states of health and thriving.
So true. I had a question that came
Yes.
up in my head after you were talking about cell signaling and cell factors. Now, this is something that I've recently come across within this world of regenerative medicine, where obviously we've known that one of the 12 hallmarks of aging is that altered intracellular communication. So it's one thing to have peptides come exogenously, but if our cells don't communicate well, those peptides aren't going to have the impact that they could otherwise.
Correct.
Are you seeing, and we don't have to dive deeper because I know it can be a podcast on itself, but what are these things that are potentially could be improving our cell signaling, and what are these cell factors that you're talking about?
So I think that 2026 is the year of the mitochondria. So what we teach foundationally, it's like, again, if you don't have a healthy cell, you don't have a healthy cell membrane, that cell's not working efficiently. Anything. I don't care if it's a stem cell. I don't care if it's a peptide. I don't care what it is that you take in, a hormone. It is not going to work optimally, and it may not even work effectively. So we always want to start with, I'm very big, Dawn's heard me lecture, and I'm always big on exposome, outer world, inner world. What's the quality of those inputs? Our body is constantly being signaled, and whether it's on the end of the fork, the air we breathe, the light from the screens that we're in, there's constant signals coming in that are producing everything from chemistry, whether I'm stressed out because I just watched a post and I can't believe that so-and-so said that thing. Now my cortisol is surging, or I just went through drive-through, or my kid just got sick. So there's all this stuff constantly coming in, right? And typically as we chronologically age, unfortunately, all these inputs are demands to the system, right? Just a very simple demand. And all that life is energy. The cell is a unit of life. It is a unit of energy. We are a big battery. That's all we are. And if we just keep it super, super simple, do we have enough charge? Is there enough battery to keep up with the demands? And typically when we think about what does it take for a cell to be viable, to be healthy, for these peptides and cell factors and all the things to work, we have to look to say, okay, let's go back to basics. The cell needs a couple of things. It needs some basic nutrients. It needs some oxygen. It needs some light. There's a couple of things that signal that cell to actually work. Right? So all of a sudden, do we have the right phospholipids? Do we have our B vitamins? Do we have magnesium and zinc? Do we have CoQ10? Do we have our essential fatty acids? These things are not just a good, awesome multivitamin. They're actually ingredients that we are supposed to be taking in to help keep that cell membrane intact, to keep that cell producing proper ATP so that it can make energy, use energy, remove waste. And so we typically go back to the mitochondria quite a bit. And it's not just about jamming more at that mitochondria. We have to step back even one step further. And this is so technical, Claudia, that it's just basic common sense. We say, okay, what if anything is potentially coming in a lot? What are the signals that are there all the time that could possibly be overloading the system, taxing the system, putting more work on the system, draining the body battery faster? And before we take in any molecules, could there be an opportunity to reduce or remove our interaction, our exposure to some of those inputs? There's a concept, right? Can we lighten our load? Oh my goodness, would we dare be willing and let go of some of my busyness? I don't think I could. I have too many to-dos on my to-do list. Forget it. Okay, you're not going to outmolecule yourself from this. You're still going to come to a point. The mitochondria can only do what it can do. So where is it overtaxed? And then when we start to okay, so now I've created a little more capacity, but also where is the deficiency? So once we remove, what also does need to be replaced and or replenished so that we have a viable structure. And again, these are things that we're teaching our clinicians all the time. And what's unfortunate is that not only were we not all taught this, and while it is very common sense, like you can hear me say it and go, oh yeah, that does make quite a good bit of sense. What happens as a clinician, regardless of what letters are before or after your name, when another human comes in to gain support from you, like you care so deeply, and whether you have 5 minutes or 5 hours, you're like, we somehow get fixated on the thing. We get fixated on the problem that they're presenting with and their desired outcome. And so all of a sudden it's like we put blinders on somehow, and we forget the common sense of the body and the pathways and the signals, and we forget to just pull back a little bit and look at what's affecting the system and this human that could be creating this problem to begin with. And the only way we're going to get to the outcome is to have an appreciation for where they're at right now and what's already adding to. Because if we can't do something here, we don't necessarily get there.
Yeah.
And so it's not that clinicians mean to get go down the rabbit hole. It's out of their love and their desire to support. Yet the greatest gift I think we can give ourselves and our clients and patients is to go, let me zoom out. Let me hold space and look at the bigger picture. Let me realize they're not broken. I don't have to fix them. We just have a system that's out of balance. It's just out of balance. Too much of
Love
some
that.
things, not enough of other things. So how do we support this human system to come back into greater states of alignment and balance and aliveness?
Yeah.
I love that, Melissa, from the well, let me a question that's been running through my head on this is that in medicine, we're typically treating symptoms of some kinds. I don't feel good. I go see my doctor. We do a blood test. We do some type of imaging. We do this. Your disease lies in either the dysfunction of the blood test, the dysfunction of the stool sample, whatever. And when we start talking about peptide therapy,
Yeah.
we're now talking about micro adjustments to systems.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite variable is heart rate variability. This is,
love it.
this is where we go back to. And everything I do aligns to that. That's my big number on my dashboard.
Yeah.
Do we expect to see a practitioner from your standpoint?
Yep.
Do you see different imaging, lab work, things like that based on a peptide-based treatment protocol rather than a pharmaceutical? Because listen, traditional medicines, pharmaceuticals are surgery when it comes right down to it. That's what's that 95% of medicine. When you decide to go down this peptide pathway, are there different indicators that you're looking for?
Yeah, we're still using objective measurements for sure. We teach a combination of subjective, how the patient client is presenting, and objective. So everything from our functional biomarkers like HRV and just even resting heart rate and oxygen saturation. Remember, oxygen, the cell needs it, right? Are we getting enough of it? To labs. And so what I will say, and we caution our clinicians all the time, is that when we put too much power into the test and over testing, then there's typically not a lot of, and testing gets expensive. And I always say testing for what reason? We want to use whatever objective metrics and markers we need that will validate and necessitate and inform how we are going to care for this person. So if there's another way to get that information, can we get a pretty clear picture if we do a really good assessment and physical exam? We should be able to as clinicians if we've been properly trained. So a lot of times, clinicians move to testing, whether it's and everybody puts the power in the test. And then it's like, but wait a minute, what is it really showing us? Well, where to focus. So when we go into patient care, we triage what's immediate, short, long-term, what's really presenting, where are they at, where do they want to be, and what do we consider that we need that will help us to get there. Now, peptides, for most people, we teach they're a part of an integrative care plan. They're not the sole solution. It's like I've said, you've got to prep that terrain, and prepping that terrain could be very much lifestyle based, right? Or even dare I say the word detox, like other things that we need to do to prep the system in certain ways. And so what you're really asking is, hey, yes, we look at labs 100%. And yes, there are markers that show us when we understand. So let's even just think about a GLP. Well, where we want to see if blood sugar and insulin sensitivity is responding, right? Like those are measurable markers, and that's part of what that medication. And we look at body mass, and we look at BMI, and we look at weight. Like these are all things that those are objective markers. They should be improving if the patient is having a proper response to that. As an example, soft tissue injury, we can do MRIs pre and post. We can do ultrasound pre and post. We can do x-rays pre and post. Do we see an improvement? And even like those molecules, what we see is a faster healing time. So it takes less time to fully repair and recover and less frequency of re-injury, right? So we still, based on our specialty and our zone of genius, we still find ourselves using a lot of our metrics that we would already be using. But now we've put a new variable into the equation, right? And based on how that's being used, we should still be seeing things improving. And if we're not, then we go, what's happening here? What do I need to dial up or dial down? Yeah.
So one of the things we talk about on the podcast is what I call my 4 rocks in the jar. What are the big rocks in the jar? My biggest rock in the jar is movement. You hack it with exercise. Second is nutrient-dense food. You hack that with supplements. The third is sleep. You can't hack sleep, but you can hack the sleep environment. They're critical. And the fourth rock is light. Learning to aligning our rhythms and eliminating toxic light, bringing in healthy light. And this goes into the jar of purpose. Is there anything on that list that because I believe biohackers, many cases, are people who want the benefits of exercise, clean eating, good sleep, and healthy light, but they don't want to change anything to get it. They don't want to exercise. They don't want to, is there anything that peptides replaces on that list?
As far as purpose or all the other lifestyle variables that you just mentioned?
Well, can you take a peptide and remove your need to exercise?
Well, that's an interesting thing. So as a human being, I'm going to say, no, we're designed to move. However, there are exercise mimetics, meaning they can activate the same pathways that exercise would. So if we even just talk about MOTS-c, it's known as an exercise mimetic.
Love MOTS-c, yeah,
right?
One of my favorites,
and so it's helping to activate, and you know this from longevity, those AMP-K pathways. And so it's those benefits. So we can see that we can get some of the same benefits as if we were exercising. Now, does it replace it? No. It's just saying it's doing similar things, but there's so many other benefits that we get from moving our body, as an example. So will a peptide ever replace sleep? No. Will it help sleep? Absolutely.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, I'm with you on that.
Completely. Will it ever replace physical activity? No. Will it ever replace good nutrition? No. Again, will it enhance? Because you need a good terrain to even get the best result from these things, right? But I think finally, and where we're really at, and I have to go in a minute, I would love to keep talking to you guys, is
Melissa, we're going to have you back on, okay?
Yes,
because
there's so much to
I have
talk
at least 3 rabbit holes I want to go down.
We will
okay?
go down them, Dawn.
Yes.
We'll start off the new season. But I will say, I want to honor you with this, because you and I are very kindred spirits on this, is purpose. And I'm going to tell you guys, I just got back from the World Economic Forum in Davos, and I had the honor to get to be one of the few people to speak at a roundtable that was hosted by the Gallup poll. And, one of the things that we discussed is the fact that well-being is at its lowest point in human history. And why, right? For all the technology, for all the medicines, for all the antidepressants, for all the things. And it's not just in the United States. This is a global epidemic. We are at the lowest point. And of course, with AI increasing, there's a lot of different variables to this, but one of the key themes that came up again and again and again is really, it is around purpose, meaning, right? And I teach a lot in our longevity protocols, et cetera, over at Human Longevity Institute. Aging is optional. It's simply a mindset. It is really what's happening here. And on any day, there's a lot that could overload us, that could seem doom and gloom. And I'm not being Pollyanna and saying things don't exist. However, where our attention goes, our energy flows, right? And so do I choose to get up and understand that I am showing up on purpose today with an intention that life is happening for me. And I'm here to share my greatest gifts. I'm here to receive the greatest gifts that life has to share with me, from curiosity and support and friendship and laughter and innovation and the experience of the sights, the sounds, all the senses. That's aliveness. And so purpose, there is never a peptide that will outpurpose purpose. There
Yeah.
is not a molecule that exists that will create what you get when you just like take a moment and deeply, hand to heart, get curious about yourself and just go and be intentional about choosing to get up and participate with presence in your life every day. It's one of the richest and most rewarding experiences. It's why we're here. It's what it means to be human.
Oh my God, so well said.
And
That's
if you're
beautiful.
listening, what we expect you to do is to like this episode and to share
Send
it
it
with your
to
friends
someone.
and to follow us. You can find Dr. Melissa Petersen at Peptide University. You can go there and peptideuniversity.com, correct, Melissa?
MyPeptideUniversity.com. Yeah.
You can find me at trainrecoverwin.com. By the way, we just made the announcement. Melissa, I need to follow up with you. I just joined the ownership team at Mode and Method, the HRV Plus product. So we need to talk about that.
Yes, we do.
And you can find Claudia at Longevity Journalist. You can find her on LinkedIn and on the socials there. Thank you so much. We're going to have you back
Yes.
because, like I said, there's several rabbit holes we need to
Oh,
explore.
yeah. And
You
Claudia,
need to go,
we'll
though.
talk about the health span and well span scorecards and the work that we're doing
Yes.
with smart cities and really creating a global health span metrics system to design the cities of the future to literally bring about greater states of health and human flourishing.
Love that.
So
So we'll talk about that next
Let me know when
Melissa,
you're in South
thank you.
Florida because we got to catch up in person.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Oh, you guys will be dangerous.
Thank
Claudia, you should just go on over and you guys go down to Miami and just rip it up. Have a great day, everybody. Look for our next
Thank you so
episode.
much for
Melissa,
coming.
thank you.
Thank you guys so much.